Retro platformers never go out of style, and for good reason. As Nintendo discovered 4 decades ago, running and jumping through a stage is fun on its own, even with minimal bells and whistles. But before Super Mario Bros., Donkey Kong gave us the first glimpse of jumping mechanics. A single screen, you versus the ape, and a variety of obstacles to avoid with well-timed jumps. The idea of mascot-driven platformer games caught on immediately, becoming a staple for all sorts of licenses, even before Super Mario Bros., with Coleco's 1982 ColecoVision platformer, Smurf Rescue in Gargamel's Castle. Nintendo, of course, built on their platforming expertise with the NES debut title Super Mario Bros., what they called an athletic game. Not only could you run and jump, but you could also squash enemies, collect coins, punch boxes, and shoot fireballs at enemies. A whole slew of new, interesting mechanics. As technology improved, so did the control, graphics, and sound of platformers. Mario's debut on the Super NES, Super Mario World, served as a showcase of new 16-bit technology. Some platformers pulled in shoot-'em-up mechanics even more completely than Mario's Fireball, like the brutally difficult Contra series, where blasting everything on screen takes priority over timing jumps. Melee attacks were also a popular twist, fusing platformer mechanics with combat akin to arcade brawlers, such as the unique whip attack in the Castlevania series. Nintendo's rival Sega approached platforming in their own way. After the general failure of Alex Kidd, at least in the West, Sonic the Hedgehog stood out as a faster, edgier alternative to the Princess Saving Plumber series. As games evolved into the third dimension, developers had to decide how to adapt. One example is Nintendo's third-person camera controls in Super Mario 64, along with fleshing out collectibles in a variety of small, open worlds. On the PlayStation, Naughty Dog decided to keep the camera static, and the experience linear, with Crash Bandicoot, creating a very different, but equally valid, 3D platforming experience. Indie developers also gravitated to platformers early on, building on the classic formula with die-and-retry titles like Super Meat Boy and Celeste, which take quick levels and wall jump mechanics to new heights, the latter also weaving a deep narrative in the game's progression. 3D platformers have also made a comeback in indie titles such as Pseudo Regalia, designed to evoke the simple graphics and worlds of these late 90s games. Obviously, we've only scratched the surface of retro platformers. I left out several of my favorites like the Mega Man series and its spin-offs, Aladdin and Rystar on the Sega Genesis, and countless others. We haven't even touched the portable consoles. We also didn't talk too much about subgenres like platformer RPGs or Metroidvanias. Share your favorite retro platformer in the comments and tell us why it's good. I'd love to see more examples. But now, what do these games have in common? Often physics is a key part of the core mechanics, such as gravity, but it's always controlled and intentionally designed to maximize player enjoyment by balancing challenge and fun. If you just throw in your engine's default physics system, the game probably won't feel great. Combat is an optional feature, but the game will need some sort of obstacles. At the very least, traps to avoid, like in Super Meat Boy, can provide sufficient challenge. Collectibles can also be key. Temporary or permanent power-ups add depth to the gameplay, while MacGuffins like coins, gems, and the like can encourage a replay for a 100% clear. Varying speeds, and by extension, jump length and height, can often increase game feel, whether the player accelerates after some time moving in the same direction, or needs to hold a button, or both, as we have in many Mario games. Although most 2D platformers after Super Mario Bros. Featured scrolling, single-screen games like Donkey Kong still qualify. Now that we know what a retro platformer is, or can be, we challenge you to make a retro platformer in 10 days. We're putting the cutoff for retro around the year 2000, targeting any console prior to the PlayStation 2, such as the NES, the Super NES, the N64, Sega Genesis, Sega Saturn, PlayStation, or even older consoles, the Atari 2600, or even DOS. Although Dreamcast does meet this definition, as it was released in 1999, styling a game like a Dreamcast game would probably push the boundaries of the jam too much. So make sure you're firmly in retro territory. The 10 days intentionally cross 2 weekends, so you can optimize for your schedule. You could only work on the weekends, you could choose specific days to work, you could do a little every day, whatever is best for you. Here's some basic tips. Get a basic prototype up as soon as possible within the first couple days, so you have something to build on. It's better to have one playable level than a ton of assets that you don't have time to piece together at the end. Kickstart your development with freely available assets on itch, like my music linked in the description, and note that Most of these free assets allow you to edit, so think of them as a tool and a starting point, and not necessarily the actual assets you will end up using. Similarly, use open source and plugins to accelerate development on the programming side. Join the 8 Bits to Infinity Discord, also linked in the description, where a lot of experienced community members are willing to help you if you do get stuck. Finally, remember to submit early and don't worry about how your game page looks. As long as your game files are uploaded before the deadline and you submit the game to the jam, you can modify the game page itself later, adding more text and screenshots. After the jam ends, I will be linking a Google form on the Discord to submit your game for my live stream on March 28th. I'll do my best to play through all of the games that are submitted, and time permitting, may also play some additional games from the jam. I will also be producing a deep dive feedback and analysis video for the winner of each category. If there are only 1 or 2 winners, I will also do some second place entries to make sure the total count is around 4 or 5. If you have any questions about the jam, especially related to the rules, you can ping me on Discord at RetroIndieJosh, and I will do my best to respond. Okay, let's finally get started. The theme is clouds. You're free to interpret the theme as you wish. More creative interpretations can earn higher ratings, but you also need to be sure that it's clear that your game applies the theme. And with that, the jam has begun. Good luck, have fun, and happy jamming.